This is my solution to day 9 of Advent of Code 2020, all done using Excel. If you don't know what Advent of Code is, basically it's a website that sets daily coding challenges throughout Advent in the lead up to Christmas. All of this is wrapped up in a Christmassy story and it's really good fun, so go check it out. The link is in the description. Today I'll be looking at challenge 9, day 9, and there's 2 parts to every challenge, and I will explain the challenge as I show you my solution. Every challenge gives you an input, and that input is unique to you. It varies from person to person. My input is this on the left hand side. Basically it's a set of numbers, and you can see they have given me 1000 numbers, and generally they increase in size. But we're also told some rules for this. So the first 25 numbers are random, and then after that every number is only valid if you can find a pair in the previous 25 that when added together equal the next number. So what I mean by that is, if we look at these first 25 numbers, the next number here, 7, is only valid if there are 2 numbers within this set that can be added together to make 7. And you can see there's a 4 here and a 3 here, therefore 7 is valid. If we move along, the next set of 25 can tell us if the next number is valid. So this time we've got 37, and now we can't count the 21 here, we can only use the previous 25 numbers. And you can see there is a 7 and a 30, so 37 is also valid. The first part of the challenge was to check this list of numbers and find the first value that does not meet the conditions described before. So basically the first number which does not have a pair in the previous 25 that can be added together to make that value. So what I've done is I've set up this table and a few cells here to help me work through this. At the moment we're starting on position 26 because that's the first number to check, and here the value is spat out, it is 7, and you can see that's true, that this 26th number is 7. And then this check is saying if this number appears over here, then we know it's valid, and in this case it says true because 7 appears here and it also appears here. What this table is all of the previous 25 numbers, so you can see this here matches these 25 numbers, as does this. And so this is just a table to give me all of the potential pairs and sums of those pairs for me to check against. If I increase that position by 1, you'll notice that these numbers all shift. And that is shifting along because we're checking the next number along, and so we only want to look at the previous 25 numbers. So you'll notice that 31 will shift to here, 33 will shift to here. And then a new number is added on the end. And this is all done just using formulas. So I'm going to put it back to 26 because that's the first number we want to check. Now, if we go to VBA, we can see my code for part 1. And there's very little going on here. All it's doing is exactly what I was just doing then manually, increasing the position and then checking if that number is valid. So if I run this, you'll just notice this cell will go up one at a time, the value will be listed here, and it will say true if that value is valid. And as soon as it's not valid, my code will stop and we'll get our answer. So let me run that. You can see the numbers shifting across, and now the numbers are too large to display, but it will continue to check them, and it's working through the whole list, and it stops when valid becomes false. And so this is my answer. Part 2 of the challenge tells us that there is a contiguous set of numbers, a contiguous list that will sum up to be the value of our original answer here. So what I mean by that is we have to check all combinations of numbers that are next to each other to see if it totals this number. So the first list we would look at is 21 and 10. Then we might check 21, 10 and 24. And then we might check the first 4, and so on. It could start in the second position, it could start in the ninth, and it could be any number greater any number of numbers greater than 2. But the condition is that there is one set of those numbers that equals this number here. So I've done a similar thing. I've set up some formula to help me with this. C1 is my start position of my list, C2 is my end position. So at the moment we are looking at 1 to 2. And the total of that is 31, which is listed here. This tells me if it matches my number, which it doesn't, and this tells me if it exceeds my number. Of course, if that list added together is greater than my number, I don't want to keep checking longer and longer lists. I know that is always going to be over, so I stop there. So what's going to happen is I'm going to increase this number and check every time if it matches or exceeds my target. And as we keep going, the number goes up and up and up, and eventually it will either match this number of it or exceed it. If it exceeds this number, I will then start adding to the beginning of my list until that number goes below my target, at which point I switch back to increasing my second position. And the code for this is very similar. Part 2 here, you can see I'm doing a similar while loop. This time I'm checking if the match is true. So as soon as that number, that total here, matches my target, this will say true. Whilst it's not true, I need to start changing what I'm looking at. So first of all, I will increase my position 2 number by 1 every time until it either matches or exceeds the target. If it exceeds, then I'm going to start adding 1 to my start number until it matches or is below my target, and then I'll start adding back to position 2 again, sorry. So let me walk through that. If I start here, it adds 1 to here, and then it will do the same, and it's going to continue to do that until it either matches or exceeds. I know this one would exceed, so if I run this code through, eventually this number here, this total, will go over the target, at which point we enter this loop, and we're going to start adding 1 to this number. As I do that, you can still see the total is higher than my value, and so I'm going to keep going through that until my total goes below my target or matches my target. So if I just run through that as well, you can now see it's fallen below my target, and so we're going to start increasing this number again. So I'm going to let it run through, and this way you don't have to check every single combination. You are just shifting the start and end points until you go above or below the target and eventually find it. And then the answer for this one is to add together the minimum and maximum number in that range, and in this case the minimum is this number, the maximum is that number, and that's them added together, and that is the answer for my Day 9 challenge part 2. If you want a copy of this spreadsheet, please drop me an email. My email's in the description. Like I say, I will share other days throughout the advent of code, the ones that I think are more interesting. Basing it off last year, I imagine there's going to be some really fun visual challenges that I can share later on in December. Thanks for watching.